All right, everybody, I would like to introduce you to Mai Sutton, and they are going to talk about the values of the decentralized web, as I mentioned previously. Take it away, Mai.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you for having me, and wish I could be there in person. I'm in LA, but I'm there in spirit. And let's see, I don't know how many people I'm speaking to, but I'm going to just share my screen. So give me a second while I do that. So I can do my little presentation. Okay, I think it's loading. Okay. All right. So I'm going to spend the next, let's see, I'm going to give myself a timer because I don't think I'll be able to hear anybody. Okay, so I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or so just talking about what DWeb is, where it came from, where we are, and where we're planning to kind of go with it, and give an example of a project, which is a project that I'm involved in called COMPOST Magazine and Distributed Press, as a kind of example of a DWeb sort of project, and as a kind of way to describe how at least I am thinking about it in terms of the way we organize and collaborate, and not just think about things as decentralized, but also interdependent. So if I were there in person, I would ask you all to raise your hand if you have been to any DWeb events. I'm going to assume, you're probably in these circles and have been at archive things, on mailing lists, things like that. So I'm sure many of you have heard about it, but I'd like to just give a brief kind of like history where we started talking about this idea of DWeb in this context since 2015 or so. There was actually a DWeb meetup in Berlin that was hosted by our friends at YOLOCOM. And in 2016 was the first in-person DWeb summit at the Internet Archive there. And then in 2018, there was another summit at the San Francisco Mint. I've been to those events as well. And it was kind of, I would say, like in retrospect, like we were trying to find our sort of like identity, or like think about what it is we were kind of championing. Our sort of slogan, our unofficial slogan, is building a better, safer, more private, and more fun web with many winners. And when we were thinking about the next event, several folks were saying, actually, why isn't this a camp? Why aren't we outside, embedded in our ecological context, and also just be more present with each other, to see each other as humans, to obviously hear about each other's projects, but not kind of be separated by our labels and our titles of our jobs, but actually see how we can all participate in building webs, as the title of this talk goes, by us and for us. And so this is a photo from our camp at the Mushroom Farm near Pescadero, California, in 2019. We were there for several days. If you were there for the build, you were there for an entire week. And it was just a really incredible event where we talked about what decentralization looked like at various levels of the network stack, from the hardware level to the last mile infrastructure level, to of course the protocols and the platform and the user experience, to organizationally what it would look like to be decentralized. And we really found that being outside, outdoors, was really a good way to allow people to make these really deep connections. One of the things that came out of DWeb Camp in 2019 was these conversations about, what is it that we want? What are we actually talking about here when we say a better web? And so this is from one of the sessions that was held about what we kind of want as different constituents that we represent. And, we all represent different kinds of constituents. And so we did this kind of brain dump in the Dome. It's called the Dome of Decentralization. And kind of out of that, as we barreled into 2020, and obviously with the pandemic and everything that was happening, we decided to embark on a project to define what we actually stood for. Instead of just saying we wanted the web to not be centralized, we were wanting to put a stake in the ground and say, what does it mean to meaningfully decentralize? And so the DWeb principles came about. It was a process that took about over a year, where my co-conspirator, co-steward, John Connor Ryan, who has a long history in Silicon Valley, we kind of came at this from maybe different perspectives, and we decided to draft a version of the DWeb principles that then everyone else could just like criticize and hack and like tear apart. That was kind of the point of it, to kind of say like, this is what we're kind of thinking it would look like, but we want you as a community to shape it and be loud about it and say, what would you stand behind? And so it was this long process of like us writing it, getting feedback. We had feedback groups. We presented at our DWeb meetups that we held, all remotely. And then, we ended up with a version of these principles where we wanted to define the values of this community, and then also recognize the fact that this wasn't, standing in contrast to or to sort of like replace other types of values documents or principles documents, that we actually stand alongside them. And I'm not going to read, all of them thoroughly, but I wanted to just like go through them really quickly. So the first one is technology for human agency. And this one, we wanted to, talk about the fact that technology should serve humans. We're not building technology for technology's sake. We should be the beneficiaries. Our privacy, our security, our self-determination should be prioritized. I'm not going to read everything here, but we value open source as a fundamental building block, peer-to-peer relationships. And I think this piece is actually really core to our work, which is that we believe that multiple technical means will be more effective than a single technical solution to achieve ethical and people-centric outcomes. Distributed benefits is our second principle. And this is speaking to, essentially the ways in which control and profit has been concentrated, right, among shareholders, CEOs. It's embedded into the DNA of the companies that are, have created our sort of like digital world, right? And that's why the internet keeps being so terrible, is because they have to care about shareholder interests, about profit. That just undermines every other consideration. And so we really want to champion the idea and our belief that not only should these platforms be, maybe run as cooperatives, or at least, employee stock-owned partnerships or B Corp, some way in which other, values are embedded into the organization that is creating the technology, designing and stewarding the technology. Mutual respect. So we really wanted to ensure that the spaces that we curate conversations in, the spaces in which we work and collaborate, people feel safe and people feel like their perspectives will be listened to, and that there's this baseline understanding that we're just not going to be accepting of people who are really disruptive or disrespectful, or obviously causing harm or making people feel unsafe. And so we just, sometimes it feels like it's a given, but, putting this front and center, I think, ensures that people know that we're taking this seriously. And then also, I think another piece I'll mention here is that we stand for open and transparent organizational practices, motivations, and governance. And I'll talk a little bit about that later as I talk about this DWeb work that we're doing. Number 4 is empower people. This is, this is a wall of text for those of you watching this. So let me see some highlights. Yeah, so the objective of building a decentralized web is to protect human rights and empower people, especially those who experience systemic inequity and prejudice. Um, we condemn the use of distributed tools for activities antithetical to human rights. Um, and um, and I think, yeah, I'll read the last one, which is we encourage the development of tools and applications in many languages and forms with a high degree of accessibility. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. And then, yeah, ecological imperatives. We are, in this principle, we really wanted to ensure that we weren't just talking about humans. We were talking about the earth, this living, rock that we all live on that is just being, I don't need to go into it, but we all know that we are not doing enough to protect it, and we are actually, with our way of life, we are actively destroying it. You'll notice that actually the previous slide is called ecological imperatives, and then this, it's ecological awareness. So actually, officially, it's called ecological awareness currently. John and I are in the midst of revisiting this principle. We think it could be a lot stronger, a lot more, have a lot more teeth to it. I think it's time as technologists and activists to really put this front and center. So stay tuned for that work, where we hope to have a much more stronger statement on ensuring the DWeb has ecological imperatives embedded in it. And I said before, these are some of the other principles that we had referred to as we were developing the principles. And so we just felt like it was important for us to say, we're not just like this new thing. We come out of a legacy of conversations that are thinking about these types of issues. And you can visit all of these at getdweb.com/principles. So yeah, so just going to shift a little bit to talk about my project, Compost and Distributed Press. This is a blog post that I drafted as a recap of a meetup we held during the pandemic, where we invited our DWeb fellows from 2019 to talk about the ways in which community networks in South Africa, in rural Brazil, in a rural area outside of Bangalore, India, how they were using their community networks. Often they are mesh networks where they have antennas that create a local network with locally hosted information and culture that is archived from the communities. What they were doing to spread information about how to be safe under COVID. And we were realizing that even before then, that why are we using Medium to post our blog posts about the decentralized web? Why don't we have a DWeb means of publishing to the different new protocols that have been emerging that are completely useful? And so as a result of DWeb Camp, actually a couple co-conspirators and I from Haifa Worker Cooperative in Toronto, we met weekly and we were like, okay, what would it look like to make a truly decentralized or distributed press? And so the first part of this project actually came out of this idea that we wanted it to be as easy as publishing a blog on WordPress to publish to different DWeb endpoints. And then we were like, okay, that's great. However, we also want to find a way for people who have never used these DWeb protocols and would actually be the people who would benefit most from DWeb tools and DWeb publishing to be involved in this. And so we were like, okay, actually maybe having a magazine that would be the active use case of distributed press, as it's kind of like dog fooding of this tool, and actually have the creators and contributors to the magazine participate in the development of this tool, be a way in which we're building this technology. So instead of us being like, oh, this tool should exist because it doesn't exist, actually having a means in which that kind of like feedback is incorporated into the development as we're building. So Compost was born. This was the first issue, Fertile Grounds, where we decided that the magazine itself would be about the digital commons. And it itself would be the digital commons. We think both aspects of compost and distributed press is, we're adding to the cultural digital commons, and then also through building an open source, free and open source tool for publishing to different DWeb protocols, that itself would be digital commons infrastructure. And so we had 10 pieces, and it was really incredible to work with people who were really curious and thinking about these in different new perspectives. You'll notice that the URL here is hyper://one.compost.digital. This is fetching it from the Hypercore protocol, which is a append-only peer-to-peer protocol, which is one of the 3 that we're exploring publishing with. And this is our second issue, viewed on the Brave browser, where you can actually access IPFS files through Brave. So you'll see that the URL is ipns://2.compost.digital. And I'll briefly, since I only have 5 minutes or so, talk about how that works. So if you're in Brave and you visit, if you visit our site on IPFS, which you can do, you can actually import to IPFS the components or the entirety of the magazine, and realize that it's actually saving it to your own computer. And so you have a copy of this website. And so functionally, we have to have all of our content, CC licensed, because the idea is that it would be copied, it would flourish, everywhere. There's no way we'll be able to enforce any type of rights, copyright, if it's on the decentralized web. So as I said, it's a package, so the whole thing can be copied, forever, can be pinned on IPFS, and so if you are in an offline context where you don't even have access to the capital I internet, like at one of the community networks in Bangalore or Brazil, maybe you want to be able to share a website with somebody and navigate it as such, without connected to the internet. You're maybe on a boat, or maybe you're outdoors or something like that. You can share this with somebody in its entirety. Yeah, I wanted to say that compost and distributed press, we ourselves are driven by these value pillars that we described as we were formulating the project. And this really informed our work with the DWeb, projects, because in a lot of ways, of course, we need to have legislative fights. We need to have the technology being built the right way. But a major aspect of ensuring that we are building what we want to build is kind of having a sort of cultural space or a social space where we're kind of keeping each other accountable, and we're talking about what matters to us, and saying, if someone does something in the wrong way, to be like, hey man, like, why are you using, that protocol? That's like run by a mega corporation, or why aren't you paying your developers enough? I mean, I think these types of conversations, these kind of like tricky conversations, need to happen. And the DWeb principles is kind of a way towards moving in that direction. We'd really like to have other tools for ensuring that people understand the DWeb principles, that, maybe we'll have something where if you uphold it really well, you get like a, maybe the community, there's a vote, like, oh, this project is upholding the DWeb principles really well, something like that. And we're hoping to build towards like ways of sort of embedding it even more. And so if you'd like to follow Compost, we're on Mastodon. Don't follow us on Twitter. We're probably not going to be posting there anymore. But we're on Mastodon at compost at .social.coop. Sadly, we're on Instagram. A lot of artists and creators are on Instagram, so we do have a presence there. Our next issue is coming in March 2023. Yes, Lisa. Am I over time already?
No, you're not over time or anything. I'm sorry. I thought you were finished because you had the contact slide. No, we're just going to do a Q&A when you are done. Don't let me rush you at all. Boop.
Okay, great. So so I wanted to like loop it back to the DWeb work. So what comes next for the DWeb? This photo is from our camp in 2019, where we had the children who were at camp. I think we had about 8 kids at DWeb Camp 2019. In our last camp this year, we had 20 children, and we're hoping to have more kids at the next one. They're just like such a delight to be there, and like they have so much to say about the future that they want. And we need to listen to them because we are bestowing all of this technology to them. I have stories about that, but I don't think I have time for that. But I think right now too, we are really formulating what DWeb is. About now, I guess a month ago, there was a article in the Atlantic about what DWeb is as opposed to Web3. And Brewster was quoted saying, this is distinct from Web3. I've written a piece as well about this distinction between DWeb and Web3, and that what we're really thinking about is power and who controls the technology, who's designing it, and how are we stewarding it. I think when you think about all the ways in which technology is broken, as I said before, it's because the organization is broken. It's because of, political economics, of course, but actually the people who are building it are deciding what the ultimate purpose of the technology is for. And it's usually, sadly, profit. And so what would it look like for us to support each other as we're trying to build, cooperative, B Corp, collective technologies where we support each other? We're not maybe having some healthy competition, but are interoperable, that we're interdependent, that we're lifting each other up. And so that, I think, is what a real decentralization would look like on the web. And so just wanted to quickly say that we have some events coming up. Our next DWeb camp is going to be June 21st to 25th, again in Mendes, at the MLK Memorial Library. And then there's a DWeb Camp Brazil by our friends in Brazil that are organizing one in April 2023. And on
yeah, it's like, oh shit, contact slide. So, okay, great. So we do this hokey thing because with our setup, you can't hear the audience when they ask questions. So I give them a microphone and they ask their question so we can hear it, and then I repeat it so you can hear it, and then you answer so everybody can hear it. No? Okay, great. Is it Dimitri? Yeah. Oh, turn it on. Or turn it on there, one or the other.
Testing? Okay.
That's a great question. Well, so there's different levels, right? You can sign on to the principles. If you go to our website, you can sign on and say, I agree with the spirit of these principles. You can please come to our events. That's really where you can hear what else is going on in the ecosystem. You can get involved in one of the DWeb camps. So we'll definitely have more information about getting involved with DWeb Camp 2023, even Brazil in April. We have lightning talks. So during our virtual meetups, we love to highlight projects that are happening. So if you'd like to sign up for a lightning talk and share your project, you can do that as well through our website. And also, I think maybe loosely, if you think this is something that you align with, to say, oh, have you heard of DWeb? It's different from Web3, and sort of be an advocate for this different vision. And yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to build a movement right now. It's kind of also a community. And so I think distinguishing the fact that it's not just blockchain, not to say that we are against blockchain. There's definitely uses of blockchain technologies that are very justice oriented, that help experiment with new different types of organizational models, that we are trying to be all encompassing and interdependent. And we really want you to just be part of the conversation and help us shape what this looks like. I see. Yeah, so we just had our call for pitches for issue 3, so that's closed. And we're going to have some really exciting pieces in our next issue. But what you can do is you can pin Compost. If you know how to pin, or I did a little demo there, if you visit Compost, you can pin a copy, so then it's available from our folks. You can support us through our Open Collective. That's one of the ways that we are supported. The other way that we're supported is through Filecoin Foundation for the Decentralized Web, where we received a grant. But we'd really like to move to sort of like a subscription, model. So you can definitely support us on Open Collective. And yeah, shoot us an email at hello@compost.digital if you're interested in learning and thinking about what it would look like to publish to different DWeb endpoints. If you have thoughts about us publishing to Hypercore, to IPFS, and also to BitTorrent, or as a torrent. Yeah, I wish I had a more concrete answer, but for now we're and I think what's really exciting is all the experimentation around shared resources that are happening with distributed autonomous organizations. And I think we are going to see some really interesting new organizations come up in the next few years. I think as many of our institutional systems fail us, I think a lot more people are going to be creating their own organizations to support each other. And I think, blockchain will help with that, but certainly it is not, our main focus.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much, Mai. Really appreciate you being here. Bye.
Thank you.